Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering CNN. Jim Acosta has been fired by CNN. They gave him an opportunity to move to a later time, which kind of was embarrassing because it wasn't really a national profile, but he at least would have been on at midnight. And then in California on the West Coast, it would have been like a primetime spot. So it was a decent offer. He could have got some momentum in that spot, but it wasn't good enough for Jim, so he's leaving CNN. From The Hollywood Reporter, Jim Acosta to exit CNN amid programming shakeup. The anchor currently hosts the 10 a.m. hour, which will soon be led by Wolf Blitzer and Pamela Brown. This is particularly significant because he was very anti-Trump, always trying to put a negative spin on what the president was doing, what the administration was doing. Got into all kinds of disputes in Trump's first term, trying to do whatever damage he can during the second term, and he doesn't have enough of a following. He's not important enough for CNN to be seen as another MSNBC type of clone. They definitely spin the news, but they don't need his style of spinning the news. Too many of these on-air talents forget they need to think about what's good for the network. Everybody has their own ideas and their own politics, so do what we do. Go get your own platform, Jim. CNN is losing one of its more high-profile anchors amid a larger programming pivot. Jim Acosta, the former White House correspondent, who now anchors the 10 a.m. hour on the venerable cable news channel, is set to exit the company, according to a source familiar with the move, who confirmed this to The Hollywood Reporter. Quote, Jim has had a long, distinguished, near 20-year career at CNN with a track record of standing up to authority for the First Amendment and for our journalistic freedoms, according to CNN spokesperson. We want to thank him for the dedication and commitment he's brought to his reporting and wish him the very best in the future. Acosta also announced the news himself with an on-air sign-off. Quote, I just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me in this show. And after giving all this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I'm grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news. I consider it a public service. Acosta continued, quote, people often ask me if the highlight of my career at CNN was the White House covering Donald Trump. Actually, no. That moment came when I covered President Obama's trip to Cuba in 2016 and had the chance to question the dictator there, Raul Castro. As the son of a Cuban refugee, which Jim Acosta is, I took home the lesson. It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that at CNN and plan to go on doing it in the future. He said he'll try to share more about his future plans in coming days. Quote, until then, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It has been an honor to be welcomed into your homes for all these years. CNN unveiled sweeping changes to its lineup last week, including a morning edition of The Situation Room, which will be hosted by Wolf Blitzer and Pamela Brown in the hour. Acosta is the first big name to exit CNN, and the change is being implemented by CEO Mark Thompson. Thompson last week also told staff that the company intends to lay off a couple of hundred employees to pivot to digital with a new streaming service in the works. The anchor was a foil to President Trump during his first term, and he actually had his White House hard pass revoked, sparking a lawsuit from CNN. And he actually won that lawsuit and was able to get back into reporting in the White House. From the Daily Mail, CNN anchor Jim Acosta leaving Embattled Network after being demoted to graveyard shift. Jim Acosta, a reporter turned anchor who spent years attempting to do battle with the Trump administration, has reportedly called it quits at CNN, which we've confirmed he has, after being threatened with losing his time slot. The anchor was left with an ultimatum as head honcho Mark Thompson ruthlessly made cuts at CNN last week, accept a midnight time slot or your future at the network is in question. The network had reportedly tried to sell Acosta on the idea of being on during primetime hours on the West Coast, but ratings were likely to take a nosedive. While Acosta's show was far from the network's biggest problem, only reruns of Bill Maher's HBO show and CNN's biggest stars like Jake Tapper, Anderson Cooper, and Abby Phillip did better than his 10 a.m. show, it could be seen as Thompson looking to take the network away from its liberal drift in recent years. The timing of the demotion, 3 days after Trump's inauguration, raised suspicions that CNN was trying to curry favor with the incoming president by sending his biggest antagonist to the Siberia of television news. Formerly the network's chief White House correspondent, Acosta achieved infamy after agitating Trump, leading to some of the president's most memorable put-downs. Quote, "You are a rude, terrible, nasty person," the president clapped back at his bother-in-chief in an especially testy 2018 exchange. Acosta's visibility soared during Trump's first term when his combative questioning riled the president and memorably provoked him into labeling CNN fake news. The then chief White House correspondent had his press credentials revoked in November 2018 when he was accused of putting his hands on a young intern who tried to yank the mic from him. Conservatives will likely shed no tears over his leaving the airwaves, as Charlie Kirk wrote after hearing of Acosta's leaving. Quote, "The media landscape is unrecognizable from the beginning of Trump's first term in 2017, and that's a very good thing for America." Acosta's proposed banishment to CNN's graveyard midnight slot delighted many of his colleagues who have long been fed up with his grandstanding ways. Few are hiding their glee that President Donald Trump's bother-in-chief has been moved from a plum morning slot to a time when viewing figures plummet even further. Quote, "Jim is one of the least liked and most eye-rolled of all talent at CNN. And this has been a long-standing status," said one network insider. Quote, "He's insufferable, an egomaniac. If he can make himself part of the story, he will." Another added, "His jealousy is even visibly thicker than his makeup and hardened hair gel." Quote, "Everyone knows he's the guy who constantly sparred with Trump, and I imagine that's not the look the network is going for right now," according to another longtime ex-staffer. On Thursday, CNN pronounced 200 layoffs and a series of major changes, one of which was to boot Acosta from his mid-morning slot and give him a show starting at midnight. He later parlayed Trump's animosity into a morning hosting gig and a best-selling book, The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America. But behind the scenes, his rise from obscurity annoyed colleagues, several of whom told Daily Mail they grew tired of Acosta's resistance shtick. Quote, "Before Trump came along, Jim was a run-of-the-mill on-air talent, but then came his epiphany," according to an insider. Quote, "He realized that if he needled Trump, people would applaud him on Twitter and online. Jim simply could not resist this added limelight." The day Trump briefly revoked his credentials for White House coverage was the absolute best day of Jim's life. Quote, "He was famous now. He was glowing, visibly thrilled and smiling. People knew who he was. He was part of the headlines. And so he began to make this his entire personality. The guy was insufferable before, but now it's times 10. He clearly felt he was seen as some kind of hero." As Acosta's profile soared, he became fiercely territorial about rival reporters encroaching on his White House beat. Quote, "He would seethe, positively royal, when male colleagues like Jake Tapper or Jim Sciutto would scoop him on anything White House or presidential related, according to the insider. He would Bigfoot a colleague at any chance he could possibly get. Quote, "Sometimes he would even drive all the way back to the White House in a hurry and try to weasel himself on air if he found out something interesting was happening on short notice." Acosta also took a frantic interest in the hotels and flights his colleagues were booking, trying to gauge whether CNN was splashing out more money on his bigger name counterparts. If he learned that a rival had a really cool hotel room, he would send him into a tailspin, according to their source. Cruz would laugh about this behind his back. Adding fuel to his critics, Acosta used a TV segment last week to hold aloft a placard reading, quote, "I march for Jim Acosta and a free press." He had kept it for 8 years after a supporter named Nora supposedly presented it to him during an anti-Trump march. Quote, "Journalists exist to seek the truth, to tell people stories, to lift up voices that may not be heard otherwise," according to Acosta. He continued, "To shine a light on injustice and hold the powerful accountable. We are not the enemy of the people. We are the defender of the people." The segment was mocked on social media. A longtime female ex-colleague said Acosta, a dad of 3 who reportedly split from his ex-wife Sharon Mobley around 2017, was always nice to her. She elaborated, quote, "It was known that Jim likes the ladies. Find me a male reporter with a healthy ego who wasn't overconfident in that regard, but nothing ever HR level inappropriate. Quote, honestly, it just made me roll my eyes, and I wasn't alone in that eye roll." Several journalists said they were alarmed by reports of Mark Thompson, a veteran British media executive who took the reins at CNN in 2023, burying a prominent journalist to throw a bone to Trump. CNN has meanwhile been giving noticeably greater airtime to its few conservative voices in recent months, with Trump defector Scott Jennings emerging as a star. They need to give Scott Jennings a show on that channel. He's really the only thing that makes watching CNN bearable. It's great to see him beat them up on air. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.